virtual reality is a game, or it's just for kids. Um, and I think that's wrong. Obviously, I mean, this is an old talking point, but now more than ever, people are understanding that virtual reality can be a tool, not only to meet new people and engage with them in new ways, but to truly grow a community. It is a in-person experience. So I can have an ability to make friends and connect in a deeper way that is not a Zoom window on my computer while I'm in my kitchen. I'm traveling and experiencing a world with this person that I've met from, South Africa or Brazil or Australia, from around the globe, have this in-person experience with. And that connection, that level of connection, really, it's another magnitude of being able to engage with someone and dive in with what they know, what their wants are, who they know, and how they live their lives.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Expert. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us or chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Roberto DaCosta. And we're going to be talking about a few things. One is running a successful networking event, especially in virtual reality. And I'm also maybe talking a little bit about public speaking and having a good stage presence. And I'm also building a community and becoming a community leader, and maybe even overcoming a little bit of public speaking fears. And if we have time, we'll also talk a little bit about virtual reality and the metaverse. So it'll be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it. And with that much as introduction, welcome on the podcast, Roberto.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here. Hello, everybody.
Hey, it's my pleasure. And just as a quick reminder for those of you that haven't had a chance, Roberto is also on the Inventive Journey, which is the sister podcast to this one. So if you want to, or definitely make sure to go and check out Roberto's journey and find out a little bit more about him there. But for those people that haven't had a chance to check out the episode and say, hey, I just want the cliff note version of what your journey is, introduce yourself a bit to the audience.
Yeah. So I started a virtual reality networking business. So we run business events in VR for the purpose of getting business owners to connect. And it's called VR Networking. You can check it out, vrnetworking.com. It's free networking in virtual reality. We run your everyday networking events. We also run monthly trade shows. We are designing pitch events for startups to get connected with investors, and investors connected with startups. And we're trying to design a bunch of new type of engaging events that you can actually participate in, whether it be on your PC or your MacBook in 2D, or you could strap on a headset and participate in those events in virtual reality, which I'm sure everybody is thinking about. Either purchasing, already has one, or eventually in the next couple of years will probably just be a mandatory thing to just own one.
Well, who knows what will be mandatory, but hopefully people will want to either way. So that's awesome. So maybe kicking things off now, we're diving into the topic at hand, which is, some of the different areas of expertise. So one that we discussed briefly before the podcast, and it also goes into what you're doing, is running a successful networking event. And so I think that's one where it's easy to quote unquote throw an event. You can plan one, you can get the venue, you can, whether it's virtual or in reality, you can schedule a place, schedule a time, get a meeting, set it up. But there's a difference between just simply scheduling the time and the place versus actually having a successful networking event. And I think that's a drawback, and if it's anybody is like me, networking events usually I cringe at and I hate, not because I don't think that if they're done well, they aren't a good event, but most of them, it's just everybody that's going around trying to simply tell everybody else what they're doing, trying to get new clients or new customers, pitching everybody. Everybody's doing the same thing. Nobody's listening to anybody else. And all you walk away with saying, well, that was kind of a waste because everybody was just doing the same thing I was, which was trying to get new clients and trying to get them to give me money. So with that in mind, and as a setup, how do you actually, run or plan and run a successful networking event, or kind of what are some of the ways that you go about tackling it to make it a success and to make it worthwhile for people?
Well, you touched on all the pain points, right? Like, why does networking suck? And why do we not want to be doing it? As business owners, I think everybody, from startup, from the small to the very large, we should all be in the networking room trying to connect with people. And I think that that's the part of it that we miss, is the connect with people portion. When you go to a networking event, you always hear people, pitch what they do, the elevator pitch. Those type of networking events just don't work, and they lose people, right? They lose the interest and people stop coming. I have been designing the networking events to start off with a question that opens up a conversation that dives into that person's life, or something just personal, right? It doesn't have to be their life, but something personal that they would open up to easily, and start a conversation around questions and topics that engage in a natural conversation, as opposed to a solely business focused, sales centric conversation. It's not about what I do. It's about how I can help you. Right. And if I know you a little bit, I might know a little problem of yours that I know somebody that might be able to help you with. And that's the point of networking. It's not about finding your clients. It's about connecting people that you meet with other people. And in turn, that energy comes back to you.
Now I'll push back just from, not that I don't agree with everything you said, but, now I think that is all, well and good. And I agree with you. But I don't, how do you go about solving everybody is going to the only reason people typically go to networking events is not to make friends, right? Typically people have friends. If you want to go make friends, you go out to a movie, go out to dinner. And so it's typically not making friends in the sense of lifelong connections that will just be a friendship. You might spontaneously get one, but that's not the reason you typically go to at least a business networking event. Typically it's to make connections for your business, and it can be everything from raising money. It can be anything from, hey, I want to find new customers, new clients. I need to find, sometimes it will be, I need to find like a new distributor or someone that will help me with solve this problem, and, those things. But typically people go in with the motivation of, hey, this is what I'm going to accomplish when I get to the networking event, which again is what kind of causes them to fail, right? If I'm going in with the mindset, all I want to do is get clients, then when I'm going to be talking about everything is always going to be with getting clients in mind. And people are fairly astute, can see that what you're there for is to get clients, and then all it does is fail. And so with that, kind of to follow up the conversation, which I think was some great points, how do you get people, as the person that's putting on the networking event, or, planning it and putting it on and otherwise making a success, how do you move people away from that mindset? Because I think it's pretty hard to get people to not have that mindset, because people are self-interested. People want to go for a particular reason. They don't want to just go or spend their time if there's going to be a return on it. So how do you kind of shift that mentality, or how do you get it to be so that they're not so centered on that it fails like many of the networking events?
Yeah. Well, that comes down to who's leading it, and how do you design the culture behind your networking events. Networking events are not just one-offs. These you don't go to one and expect X amount of clients. We're all coming in there for one goal, is to make more money. Somehow find a new client, find a referral partner, find an investor, whatever it is, that goal doesn't go away. But it's not a shopping cart. You don't go in there and you put something in the basket and you check out and you're like, awesome, I got it. It is people. These are average human beings, the normal person that wants to connect. We all have this underlying need to connect with other people. And it's not about business. Business is what we come there for, but it has to do with culture. We have to cultivate culture in our network events, our networking events in our network of people, and show that we actually care. You know, it has to be, you have to design the experience after you design the culture. And the culture itself needs to be set up front, in the middle, and at the end. So that way people retain that as the motive of why they're in this room together. And that leads to more connections. That will lead to more sales. That will lead to more referrals. That will lead to more eyes on your business, because people trust you, and it's not about you. Sure, it will become about you because you have a cool business and you have a great reputation, but you don't have any of that if all you do is say, how can I get you to be my client? You know, how can I take your money?
So now what are some of those ways that you set up that culture? Kind of, let's say you were planning one today. We'll just give a scenario. So you're planning a networking event today and you said, hey, we want to accomplish X. We want to bring people together to, we'll go with the VR, to increase the awareness of virtual reality, office applications, increase the field. And so we're going to do a networking. Maybe that's a horrible way to set it up, but it lets, you know, whatever the purpose is you choose, give us a walkthrough. Is kind of, how do you go about setting up that culture? Is it how you initially pitch it, what the material you provide to people, what you're telling them to log on? Is it when they come to the event and log in, or they show up in person, or kind of how do you set the stage for that culture?
So like I said, it's not a one-off thing, right? So it is the people who truly believe in networking that will understand this mission. You know, we'll have one-offs that people will come in once and just talk about themselves, like, this is what I do. And then they'll bounce off to somebody else who, you know, after they have a lame conversation, what they decide is a lame conversation because they can get a sale from that person. And they'll go and do the same thing over and over and over again until the room is empty and they have, you know, nobody else to talk to. They might come back and try to do the same thing, but it's reinforced in the event. It's reinforced with the topic discussions that we host and that we design, that we bring in. It's kind of hard to say this is the line. It's more of a scent, you know, an aroma in the room of helping each other out, as opposed to selling yourself out. And it's less about, you know, the actual, when you say, you know, come to our networking event, we're having this event this Tuesday. It's less about where you have it or why you have it. You know, we have it on Zoom, we have it in VR. It's not the medium, it's the people in there that make it impactful. And so we try to cultivate, and this goes into your question later about community. It's the community that is developed there. When people come in, do they feel welcome? Do they feel like the people in there are interested in them, not their business, in their business as well, of course. But if we have a giant enough community, a community that's strong, then we can have ample opportunity for you to grow your business within this pool of people who love to help each other out.
No, and I think that definitely makes sense. I think that, you know, that kind of planning and intentionality, and otherwise giving the forethought to that, can make a big difference between what would be a successful event versus one that's going to be the one that everybody shows up to, says, hey, that was a waste of time and I'm never going back. Now, one kind of pivoting the question, I know I'm hammering on networking events just because on the one hand, I think that they can be great. On the other hand, I hardly go to them because I tend to say, well, that was a waste of time. So I'm usually in that camp. But shifting the conversation just a bit, one of the other things I think a lot of times people can sometimes have a difficulty with is, so they show up to the networking event and they, you know, whatever the context is, part of the networking event typically, and maybe you'll tell me that this is a terrible way and everybody should stop doing it, is you're going to have a mix and a mingle, or you're going to have a time, you know, a speed dating round almost, where you have time where you're going to talk with people, you know, one-on-one or typically in a group, and you're going to have different conversations. Most of them are unscripted. And the difficulty is, you know, some people are great conversationalists. They can always talk, and sometimes they talk way too much. And a lot of other times, so you either got the people that talk way too much, or you got the people that you really don't go to these very often, or you don't go to them as much, you're not comfortable, and other than you ask, what do you do for work, or how's the weather, where do you live, got any kids, or you married, and you go through those few questions, and then you're out of conversations and you really don't know where to take it. So then it either becomes one of pitching your business or trying to take it in a weird direction. So how do you figure out what conversations or questions you should have, or how do you get more comfortable when you're talking at or going to the networking events, that you're actually doing it in a way that's going to be or lead to success, or lead to a good outcome for the people that are attending?
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you come into a room and you're told, hey, ask questions that are personal. Hey, what's your name? How do you have a family? Are you married? Those are, I don't care about your questions. If you're in a position where you're asking those baseline questions, where it's just questions, just to ask questions, you're not in a very good position to be in a networking room. So we come into the room and we design questions to get we divvy up the people so they have small pockets of conversation amongst themselves in groups of 3, 4, 5, maybe 6. Each one of those has their set of questions, and those questions aren't really they're not too deep, but they're kind of deep. They're asking a question to get a problem out, and then the follow-up questions are how to resolve that problem together. So when we ask these questions in the circle, you'll open up with, what is one of those problems in marketing that you're having when dealing with XYZ, whatever it is. And that might not be really, really personal, but it might be personal to you. Your answer is going to be different than your neighbor's. And then we problem solve. And that's done in a group. And to address long talkers is you just cut them off. You just have to step in and you tell them, hey, that was great. We gotta, for time's sake, we just gotta continue on and go to the next person, next question.
No, I think
that's not rude.
And it's not rude, although everybody worries it's going to be rude. You don't want to dive in, and yet it's interesting when I've done the podcast, kind of this almost the same. Now this is a one-on-one, but you'll have guests that come on, they just talk and you're always, the difficulty sometimes is they never take a breath, and you having to like dive into the middle of a sentence, because otherwise they would never stop, and it makes it hard to have a conversation. But I think that you're doing it a service of, hey, as a podcast, as an example, we've got to, keep it at a good pace, or we've got to, we can't go down too many rabbit holes. And the same thing, a lot of times people that love to talk and love to have a conversation or talk about themselves, if you jump in and dive and let them know, hey, we need to let other people talk, most of the time they're going to be pretty understanding. And if they're not, they're probably one where they're not going to add a lot of value. Now, shifting gears again just a bit, just because I love the kind of the area that we're talking about. One of the other ones that we talked a little bit about was more on the public speaking and having a good stage presence, which goes a bit hand in glove with the networking event if you're hosting one. But I even think in more general, the more you're doing business, the more you're having to present yourself, present your business, pitch yourself, and do any of those things, you're going to have to get a good stage presence. Now, that stage may be in front of investors, it may be in front of your own employees, it may be in front of, people you're trying to sell it to. But I think, while it's a different context and what you're talking about, having that presence can be a good thing. It can be great if you have a good presence, and if you don't, and you get nervous and you say and ah, and you stumble and you sweat a lot and all those other things that you always make people kind of cringe, then it can have the adverse effect. And so tell us a little bit about kind of when you're getting into the having a good stage presence, whether it's completely public speaking or having even a smaller setting. How do you get comfortable, or how do you, other than just do it a lot in practice, but what are some of the ways that you can start to work towards getting better at that?
I was terrible at stage presence. I mean, I still am. I have fear that is, I can't even explain the amount of fear that comes up when I'm in front of a crowd. I got better. The problem exists and it will always exist. But as I grow, this problem seems smaller to the amount of practice, the amount of comfort, the amount of experience that you develop around doing it over and over and over again. So, that's one way to get over it, is just to do it an ample amount of times. The other thing is to start small. You start in the room of 5. You start in a room of 4, and then you go into a room of 10, and then 20, and then 50. And then, if you could do it in front of 50 people, you could do it in front of 50,000 people. It's not, the fear doesn't get much worse than 50 people, especially if you don't know any of them. And that just takes a little practice. Being on stage is hard. Being in front of a Zoom, like if we were here in front of 50 people and I was a novice at doing a presentation, I'd be afraid because I have 50 eyeballs on me. The thing about virtual reality, it kind of like eliminates that. It doesn't fully. Obviously, there's still that stage fright that comes in, because even though they're avatars, I know that there's people behind those glasses or behind the screens looking at me fumble my way through a presentation, right? But it does ease it a little bit. So it is a great tool to practice your presentation skills.
Now I'll ask you maybe a dumb question. I have no idea. Maybe it is a good question. Who knows? But should you, if you are, some people, you just, or I think are born or very at an early age get comfortable with public speaking. Some people, it takes a lot of practice to get comfortable. I mean, they just freeze up. They have a hard time. And I think that, to your point, a lot of times start small, incrementally work up. If you're really just deathly afraid, is it better to, and I'll give you 2 scenarios and you can tell me your thoughts on them. Is it better to memorize things and, practice in front of a mirror, go through it 20 times, memorize it, know it from heart type of a thing? Or is it better to kind of know the precepts, kind of have bullet points and make it more conversational? And I know my personal bias is how I like to do it, but I'd love to get your thoughts on if you're very afraid or get a lot of stage fright or trying to just make that an incremental baby step, are you better to kind of memorize it and practice in front of a mirror, or should you just leave some notes and make it more conversational?
From my trial and error, personally speaking, at first I started just trying to memorize things and then read, line by line. And that is the worst way to do it, because if you mess up, you messed up, and so does everybody else. And then you go back a line. It's just a terrible way to experience that already terrible experience for most of us, right? The best way that I found out was to have everything written down and then chop it up into bullet points. And I know what those bullet points mean. I have rehearsed the presentation, the message that I want to have, that I want to send out. And with those bullet points, I can just easily talk about these points. And even if I fumble, like let's say I forgot something, I can just insert it in later. It's more organic in the way we just have a conversation. Sometimes I'll forget to say things while we're just having a normal conversation. I'm not presenting anything, and I'll say, oh, you know what? I forgot to mention this point is actually important, so you can understand what I just said. And that's okay. And I think that is the best way to go about it, is to practice first, get the stuff written down, get your message out clear, and then see which bullet points resonate better with that message. So that way you can pull those points out and have an easy conversation and an easy presentation.
No, and that's at least my, I'm sure that some things work differently for different people, but I think that's, at least for me, it works better. Because if, to your point, if you try and memorize it, no matter how many times you memorize it, when you get up and you have to go, you go to do it, you're going to a lot of times stumble, you're going to fall, you're going to freeze up, or you're just going to blank out. And then you sit there and you just awkwardly trying to remember, you're shuffling through your papers, looking through your notes. And for me, it's, it should be much more of a conversation, not like we're doing now, but a conversation with the audience where you're just talking and sharing, and you have the things that you overall want to share. And guess what? Even if it's not perfect, even if when you're presenting, it's not the exact words that you would have loved to have said if you'd written it out and just read the thing type of thing, I think it comes off as a lot more fluid and conversational and natural if you said, hey, here are the things that I want to touch on. Here are the general concepts, or, the bullet points type of a thing. And then it's just much more of a fluid conversation. Because then if you freeze up, you can just look and say, oh yeah, that was what I was talking about. And even if it's not a perfect transition, I think it makes for a much better presentation. So I think we're in agreement on that one.
And totally, fully immerse yourself in what you're about to say. Find the passion in what you're saying, or else that presentation is just going to flop. If you're just if you're reading from like, an encyclopedia, or as if it's an encyclopedia, that is a boring presentation, and you're going to forget what you're going to say because it is boring, especially if you're not passionate about it. So to find the passion in what you're talking about, find the thing that really resonates with you and talk about that while that subject is the main subject. That helps maintain that energy, the flow of information, that dialogue that you're having with an audience.
No, I think absolutely. And I think that to your point, if you're to get me on and get me talking about business or intellectual property or startups, I could talk forever. And even if I stumbled, I have plenty of other thoughts just because it's an area I listen to podcasts on, I listen to books on, I talk with people a lot on, I do my own podcast, and it's just an area that I feel very comfortable with. Vice versa, if you're to get up, and it was kind of funny, we have just as a complete aside, but we have a new project that leans itself towards the artistic community. And I'm not an artistic person by nature, although we'll probably still pursue the idea. But it's one of those where I don't have a lot to say on that. So if you're to get up and have me talk a lot about art, at least right now, until I get more immersed in that kind of industry, I wouldn't have much to say. And if I stumbled or I fell, I wouldn't be able to talk a lot about it. And yet it said, so if I'm again going back to business and startups now, I would be able to just pick right up and go on to the next conversation point. So I think that's, again, I love the point of choose something an area that you're passionate about, that you have a lot to say about, a lot of knowledge that you love to study, you love to read about, and you're going to make it a lot easier to start out in that area versus choosing an area that you know very little about or uncomfortable about.
Yeah, true passion though, not like fake passion. There's a difference, and a lot of people get those confused. It's like something that you should be passionate about versus something that you are actually passionate about. If I want to become, known for something, most likely at the beginning of it, when I'm just starting out and trying to present myself, I'm going to pick things that I should be knowledgeable on, as opposed to the things that actually brought me to this interest. And I think that's a missed opportunity for you to actually present something that you love, over something that you're not really in love with, but you should be a professional at. It's just not the time to be in love with that right now. So don't talk about those things.
No, I think that's a great takeaway. So, well, now we haven't even hardly scratched the surface, but we're already reaching towards the end of the podcast. Now, the one thing I wanted to hit on just a bit before, and we'll do the final question, and we also have the bonus question. But before we get to all of that, one of the other ones that we talked just a little bit about, and give you a couple minutes, I'd love to hear your thoughts, is a little bit about becoming a community leader, which I think kind of ties it all up a bit. Networking events, public speaking, a lot of what you're trying to do, a lot of times the reason you're doing speaking events, you're developing your stage presence, you're going to networking events, or you're holding networking events, is you're trying to create a community within whatever topic you're doing. And that can be everything from political, it can be from a new technology, it can be from a hobby or a sport, it can be religious, it can be around family, it can be around, there's a lot of different things. But a community leader within different avenues or different verticals is a lot of times what you're trying to create for whatever you're passionate about. So tell us a little about how, if you're to kind of, the much more summarized version, because I know it's a whole nother topic we could dive into, but how do you start to become a community leader or build a community?
Well, sometimes, more often than not, it starts by accident. You just are passionate about something, and then people follow what you're doing because they are also passionate about that thing. But if you were to ask me to design the community, you would start off with who is your ideal community member, and that ideal community member might be a figure that could replace you as a community leader. And so you want these people around. So by having, a set of these, like say 20 of these people as your frontmen or women, you have to know what their problems are and why they want to be part of your community. So what you serve is really a product. By being part of this community, you're getting this problem solved. For us, it's several things, but one of those things is to connect in a more engaging, fun way, to do business networking in a radically new medium. And that was the beginning of it. And that's how we started. Now it's grown to a lot more. But at the beginning, that's all it takes is for you to figure out the problem that the majority of your people have, and try to solve that problem. And then bring in insight and direction and help to reproduce the same thing for them. A community is there's no leader. There obviously is a leader, but it shouldn't be thought of as like a family tree where it starts with one. It's more like strawberry fields. You'll have roots going in all directions, splitting off into new plants and growing their own roots with their own berries, and it just becomes this beautiful field of strawberries. And so communities are much like strawberry fields, where it's one leader started it. You start off with one strawberry planted in the ground and it grows. But then you should try to build out more community leaders within your community. And that's how you develop a true community under a concept or an idea. Like you said, it could be religion, a hobby. I mean, growing houseplants, making sure that your houseplants are taken care of, how to do that. That is a community all on its own. So regardless of the title or the direction, that is how you should be thinking about your community.
No, I think that that definitely makes sense. So, well, awesome. Well, that we could go on for a long period of time, talk a lot about networking, have a lot of great discussions, and we didn't even touch on the metaverse, so we'll have to maybe touch on that another day. But with that, as we start to wrap up the podcast, I'm going to jump to the one question I always ask at the end of each episode. But before we do that, just as a reminder to the audience, we are going to have the bonus question where we talk about the one crazy entrepreneurial idea you've already had. Maybe it's not so crazy because you actually, sounds like we talked a little before, working to implement it. But before we get to that bonus question, the question I wrap up the normal part of the podcast or with the episode is, within your industry, what is the biggest myth and why is it wrong?
Virtual reality is a game, or it's just for kids. And I think that's wrong. Obviously, I mean, this is an old talking point, but now more than ever, people are understanding that virtual reality can be a tool, not only to meet new people and engage with them in new ways, but to truly grow a community. It is a in-person experience. So I can have an ability to make friends and connect in a deeper way that is not a Zoom window on my computer while I'm in my kitchen. I'm traveling and experiencing a world with this person that I've met from South Africa or Brazil or Australia, from around the globe, have this in-person experience with. And that connection, that level of connection, really, it's another magnitude of being able to engage with someone and dive in with what they know, what their wants are, who they know, and how they live their lives. Virtual reality is going to be a culture mesh that we've never seen in the past. And that, to me, I think is the most exciting part, is to have a level of interaction between people who would have never experienced how other people experience reality, be brought up, in front of everybody, a very close proximity to, our internal worlds and how we see things. We'll be able to really bind our world together, our different communities together. And I think that's really nice.
No, and I think that there's a lot to it. And I think that, to your point, most people, they either think of virtual reality as a game, or it's those glasses that you wear at the movie theater, or they used to wear at the movie theater before it died back out again. And I think that there's a lot more to it. And I like that, or how you portray that, because I think that there's a lot of avenues and a lot of opportunities. So that, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, so VR networking is totally free for you to attend. It's on an app called AltSpace VR, Microsoft product. If you want to know more about VR networking, just go to vrnetworking.com, all one word, and check it out. And if you have any questions or comments, just email me at connect@vrnetworking.com.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, connect with you, find out more, and or make a new best friend. So with that, as we wrap up the episode, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, first of all, remember we have the bonus question, but beyond that, do us a favor, leave us a review, click subscribe, share, because we want to make sure everyone finds out about all this awesome expertise that will help people to grow and improve their businesses. Now, with that, now as we get to shift gears, we wrapped up the normal portion of the episode. It's always fun to talk a little bit about a topic that I think is always fun, because if you're anything like me, I always have entrepreneurial ideas. They're always kind of, I call them my someday pile. In other words, someday I'm going to get to them, sometime I'm going to go after them. Probably never will, but it's always kind of that these are fun ideas or crazy ideas or ones that I think would still be, I really would love to do them, but I don't know if I have the money, the time, or the bandwidth to do them. And so I always kind of call them the crazy ideas or the some idea or someday idea pile. So with that, you'd mentioned that you had one that's a little bit about scavenger hunts and with NFTs and those type of things. So give us an idea. What is your one crazy entrepreneurial idea?
Yeah, last time we spoke about this, the funny thing is that we spoke about this idea a little bit more than a month ago, maybe. And since that time, some interesting things have happened. So the idea originally was it'd be cool if we had like a Pokemon Go version of NFT collection or finding, I don't know, some sort of crypto coin around our streets in our neighborhoods in our cities, right? That was the idea. How cool would that be? But just 2 weeks ago, I got asked to be part of the advisory board on a new company that's coming out. It's called Helm, and they do exactly that. So they will be selling plots of land on a virtual world, but at the same time, they will have this other component that kind of acts like a Pokemon finder for crypto. So you're playing essentially Pokemon Go, but all in the hopes of finding a Bitcoin or an NFT or parcels of an NFT. And once you collect all 5, then you can exchange that for an actual NFT. So that's really cool. And I thought that was interesting, and you brought that up, and I totally forgot that was the bonus question. But this new thing that's happening is really funny. That you think about things and then they become reality. It just keeps happening all the time. What is that? The law of attraction, or the secret? You ever read that book?
I have not. Sounds like a good book.
It's all about like willing things into existence. I don't actually believe that, but like sometimes it just happens. Yeah, so that was really cool. So if you guys want to check that out, it's Helm, HEALM.com.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to check it out. Sounds like a fun, scavenger hunts, I think, are to some degree a lost art, and yet others people do them all the time and they have a great time at them. So I definitely think if we can, bring them back and make them even more fun and exciting and to a larger audience, it sounds like it would be a fun way to go about doing it. So
Yeah.
with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. And I wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you, Devin. I appreciate it. And you too.